The conference room in Paris smelled like overpriced cologne and desperation. 14 floors up in a glass tower that screamed new money, I sat across from Jean-Luc Moreau, a middle-aged French corporate shark who thought his Patek Philippe and practiced smirk made him untouchable. He'd spent the last hour trying to nickel and dime my acquisition offer, acting like $2.3 million was pocket change for a controlling stake in his boutique logistics firm. His associate, a younger guy with gelled hair and a tie that cost more than my monthly rent, kept sliding revised terms across the polished table, each one worse than the last. "Monsieur," Jean-Luc said, leaning back with that infuriating grin, "you understand we have other interested parties. Perhaps your firm is not quite ready for this level of investment." I didn't blink. I'd read every line of their financials 3 times. I knew about the vendor disputes, the delayed shipments, the quiet exodus of 2 major clients in the last quarter. I knew they needed this deal more than they'd ever admit. The smirk flickered. His associate's pen stopped moving. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued, sliding a single-page amendment across the table. "We proceed at $2.3 million with the terms I outlined Monday. You sign by end of business today, or I walk and you explain to your board why you torpedoed the best offer you'll see this quarter." Jean-Luc glanced at the paper. His jaw tightened. The associate whispered something in rapid French. I caught the word inflexible. "This is not how we do business in Paris," Jean-Luc said, his accent sharpening. "Then it's lucky I'm from Connecticut," I replied. "Do we have a deal or not?" The silence stretched. Outside the window, the Eiffel Tower stood gray against a flat autumn sky. I thought about mini croissants and how Paris was wasted on people who spent all day staring at Excel spreadsheets. Finally, Jean-Luc exhaled through his nose and picked up his pen. "We have an agreement." We shook hands. The paperwork took another 20 minutes. By the time I walked out of that building, the deal was done, and my company had just absorbed a tidy little European logistics arm that would make my boss very happy. I felt the same cold satisfaction I always felt after closing. Not joy exactly, but the confirmation that I was good at this. Reading contracts, spotting weaknesses, applying pressure at the exact right angle. I checked my phone in the elevator. Emails flooded the screen, most of them noise. One subject line made my stomach drop. "Docs attached." The sender was my wife. Her name alone used to make me smile. Now it just made me tired. I opened it standing on a cobblestone street outside the building. Tourists streaming past in both directions. The body of the email was 2 sentences. No greeting, no signature. Divorce papers attached. "I'm selling your father's house for 15 millimeters to finally live the life I deserve." My vision tunneled. The noise of the street faded into a dull roar. I scrolled down and saw the attachments. Preliminary divorce filings, a letter from a real estate attorney, and a photo. In the photo, my wife stood in front of the house, my father's house, the one he'd spent years restoring with his own hands, sanding banisters until midnight, replacing every rotten board himself. She was smiling at the camera like she'd just won the lottery. Next to her stood Brett Calhoun, the developer she'd introduced me to 6 weeks ago as someone who can help us get top dollar. His hand rested on her lower back, fingers splayed possessively. The caption read, "Next chapter." I stared at that photo for a long time. My father had died 3 years ago. He'd left me the house because he knew what it meant. Knew I'd spent my childhood in those rooms, knew every creak in the floorboards and every view from every window. The house was on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic, an old Victorian with peeling paint and stubborn charm. It wasn't worth $15 million, not even close, but in the current market, with the right buyer and the right pitch, maybe someone would pay it. And she'd found someone to help her do exactly that. My hands weren't shaking. That was the strange part. I thought they should be, but they were perfectly steady as I typed out a reply. Go ahead. 2 words. I hit send and slid the phone back into my pocket. My colleagues found me 20 minutes later at a cafe, staring at an untouched espresso. David Kim, my company's lead negotiator, clapped me on the shoulder. You crushed it in there. Moreau looked like he wanted to throw you out the window. Thanks. You okay? You look like you saw a ghost. Just tired. We flew back the next day. I didn't sleep on the plane. I kept thinking about my father in the garage, teaching me how to use a level, how to read a blueprint, how to tell when someone was lying by watching their hands. He'd been a carpenter, a builder, a man who trusted wood and nails more than people. He'd been right about that. 48 hours after I sent that email, I was back in Connecticut, standing on the balcony of my cramped apartment, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. This is Andrew. Mr. Grayson. The voice on the other end was male, middle-aged, and shaking. This is Leonard Hastings. I'm the attorney representing your wife in the divorce proceedings. I know who you are. Mr. Grayson, I need to ask you something very directly. He paused, and I could hear him breathing hard. What did you do? But I was about to. Before we go any further, hit the hype button, take a second to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? 2 weeks before Paris, I'd still been trying to pretend everything was fine. I came home from work on a Tuesday and found my wife in the kitchen, phone in hand, laughing at something on the screen. She didn't look up when I walked in. Her name was Jessica, though she went by Jess with friends and Jess Living online, where she had 43,000 followers watching her curate what she called accessible luxury. That meant staging photos of overpriced candles and linen napkins while secretly maxing out credit cards. Hey, I said, setting my briefcase down. She kept scrolling. I opened the fridge. There was yogurt, some wilted lettuce, half a bottle of white wine. No real food. You want to order something? I'm meeting Ashley for drinks at 7. Again? She finally looked up, her expression flat. It's a networking event. For the blog. On a Tuesday? Jesus, Andrew, not everyone works in a cubicle until they die. I didn't work in a cubicle. I worked in an office with a door, but that distinction didn't seem worth fighting over. I grabbed the yogurt and a spoon and ate standing up. She went back to her phone, thumbs flying. I noticed she'd tilted the screen away from me, a habit that had started maybe 3 months ago. At first, I'd told myself it didn't mean anything. People liked privacy, but the angle was deliberate, careful. She was hiding something. How was your day? I asked. Fine. What did you do? Stuff. She sighed, annoyed. Why are you interrogating me? I'm not. I'm just asking. Well, it feels like interrogating. She stood, grabbed her purse from the counter, and walked past me without another word. I heard the front door open and close. Her car started in the driveway. Then silence. I rinsed the yogurt container and threw it in the recycling. Then I stood in the kitchen, alone, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and wondering when exactly my marriage had turned into this. It got worse over the next week. She started staying out later, coming home after midnight smelling like wine and expensive perfume that wasn't hers. When I asked about it, she'd snap at me, accuse me of being controlling, tell me I wouldn't understand because I didn't have a creative bone in my body. She complained about my clothes, my car, my job. At a dinner party with her influencer friends, she made a joke about starter husbands while I cleared plates in the kitchen. Everyone laughed. I smiled and kept scraping food into the trash. Then Brett Calhoun entered the picture. She introduced him at the house one Saturday morning. I was upstairs fixing a leaky faucet when I heard voices below. I came down to find them in the living room. Jess in tight jeans and a cashmere sweater, Brett in designer sneakers and a polo that showed off gym-sculpted arms. He had the kind of tan that came from a salon, the kind of teeth that came from veneers, and the kind of handshake that lingered a half-second too long. Andrew, this is Brett Calhoun, Jess said brightly. He's a real estate developer. I thought we could get his take on the house. You know, if we ever wanted to sell. Sell? I looked at her. We've never talked about selling. Well, the market's insane right now, Brett said, his voice smooth and confident. This location? Ocean views? You could pull in serious money. I've closed deals on properties like this for 15, even 18 million. It's not worth that, I said. Not as is, Brett agreed. But with the right staging, the right buyer, he gestured vaguely at the walls. This is a gold mine. Jess beamed at him like he'd just solved world hunger. I noticed the way she stood a little closer to him than necessary, the way she laughed at his jokes a beat too quickly. I noticed, and I said nothing. Over the next 2 weeks, Brett became a fixture. He'd show up with staging consultants, photographers, contractors. He'd walk through rooms with Jess, pointing at things that needed updating, while I stood in corners, irrelevant. I tried to move my father's old rocking chair back into its spot by the window, and Jess physically blocked me. That thing is hideous, she said. It doesn't fit the aesthetic. It was my dad's. And it's going in storage. I started paying closer attention. I watched them together. I saw how Brett knew things he shouldn't, details I'd only ever told Jess. I saw how she corrected me in front of him, subtle digs designed to make me look small. One night, I saw his toothbrush in our bathroom. When I asked about it, Jess shrugged. He crashes here sometimes after late staging sessions. Don't make it weird. A neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Calhoun, pulled me aside one morning while I was checking the mail. I don't like to gossip, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. But I saw a car parked in your driveway all night last Thursday. Fancy thing. I don't think it was yours. I thanked her and walked back inside. That night, I waited until Jess fell asleep, then quietly opened her laptop on the dining table. She hadn't logged out. Her messages were right there. I read them all. Texts to Brett. Andrew's so embarrassing in his cheap suits. I can't take him anywhere. Texts to her friends. Honestly, I don't even remember why I married him. He's fine, I guess. Safe. But God, he's boring. A voice memo to Ashley. Brett says we can close for at least 15. Once the money hits, I'm gone. New life, new me. I'm done pretending. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. Then I forwarded the worst messages to my own email, deleted the sent items from her account, and closed the laptop. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I opened her calendar. There, locked in for 3 weeks out, was an entry. Closing on, Father's house, 15 min orders or better, champagne at the Roost with B. Brett. I stared at that entry and felt something shift inside me. Not rage exactly, something colder, cleaner. I'd spent my whole career analyzing deals, spotting leverage, finding pressure points. Now I was looking at my own life the same way. And I realized this wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a hostile takeover, and I was very, very good at hostile takeovers. The next morning I called my father's attorney. His name was Gerald Whitmore, a man in his 70s who still kept an office above a hardware store in the old part of town. He'd handled my father's estate, and I remembered him as thorough, cautious, and deeply suspicious of anyone who wasn't family. Andrew, Gerald said when I walked into his cramped office. Been a while. What brings you in? The house, I said. I need to understand exactly how it's structured. He raised an eyebrow. Having second thoughts about keeping it? Something like that. Gerald pulled a thick file from a cabinet and spread the documents across his desk. Your father set this up pretty carefully. The house is in a trust, not your name directly. You're the primary beneficiary, but there are conditions. What kind of conditions? Well, for one, any sale requires your explicit consent. Your wife has residency rights as long as you're married, but she doesn't have ownership. If the house sells while you're still alive and married, the proceeds go wherever you direct them, according to the terms your father laid out. I leaned forward. And if I direct them somewhere other than our joint accounts? Gerald studied me for a long moment. You'd be within your rights. Your father was, let's say, cautious about protecting assets from potential future issues. He didn't trust easily. He thought someone might try to take advantage. He used the term gold digger more than once. I almost smiled. My father had met Jess twice before he died. Both times, she'd been polite but distant, clearly uncomfortable in his cluttered workshop, surrounded by sawdust and tools. After the funeral, she'd suggested selling the house immediately. I'd refused. Now I understood why my father had built so many walls into the trust. So if I wanted to redirect the sale proceeds, I said slowly, say into a charitable foundation or an educational trust, I could do that? Absolutely. As long as it's legal and documented, the trust gives you broad discretion. Even if my wife expected the money? Expectations aren't legally binding. Gerald folded his hands. Andrew, I don't know what's going on, but if you're thinking about doing something like this, you should know it's going to cause a hell of a storm. I'm counting on it. He nodded slowly. Then let's talk about your options. We spent the next 2 hours going through the documents. Gerald explained every clause, every condition, every loophole my father had built in. By the time I left, I had a plan. It was simple, brutal, and perfectly legal. All I had to do was let them move forward with the sale, sign the right papers at the right time, and watch the money disappear into a foundation they couldn't touch. That night, I went to the house. It was late, almost midnight, and the property was empty. Brett's staging crew had been through earlier, stripping away personal items and replacing them with generic furniture rented from some warehouse. The place didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a showroom, hollow and fake. I walked through the rooms slowly, remembering. The kitchen where my father had taught me to cook scrambled eggs. The living room where we'd watched football games. Him yelling at the TV, me pretending to understand the rules. The upstairs bedroom where I'd spent countless nights reading by flashlight under the covers. Every inch of this place had a memory, and Jess wanted to sell them all for a champagne toast with her boyfriend. I stood in the master bedroom and looked out at the ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks below, relentless and cold. I thought about my father's warnings, his paranoia, his distrust. I'd laughed it off. I'd told him he was being ridiculous, that I knew what I was doing, that Jess was different. He'd just looked at me with sad eyes and said, "Son, I hope you're right." He wasn't right about everything, but he'd been right about this. 2 days later, I attended an open house event. Brett had organized it, inviting wealthy buyers to tour the property and imagine their future in this stunning coastal masterpiece. I showed up unannounced, walking through the front door just as Brett was giving a pitch to a couple in matching Rolex watches. And the craftsmanship, Brett was saying, gesturing at the staircase, is absolutely one of a kind. Original woodwork, fully restored. You won't find quality like this in new construction. That's because my father did it himself, I said loudly. Everyone turned. Jess, standing near the fireplace, went pale. Brett's smile froze. "Andrew," Jess said, her voice tight, "what are you doing here?" "I live here, remember? We're in the middle of a showing." "I can see that." I walked over to the couple, extended my hand. "Andrew Grayson, this is my house. Well, technically my late father's house, but I inherited it. Did they tell you that? Did they mention he built half of this with his bare hands?" The husband shook my hand uncertainly. "We weren't aware." "Oh, there's a lot you probably weren't told," I continued. "Like the fact that the roof needs replacing in 2 years, or that the foundation has a crack on the south side that's going to cost about 80 grand to fix properly, or that the water heater is original to 1987. Brett stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Andrew, this isn't appropriate." "Truth isn't appropriate? You're sabotaging the sale. I'm providing full disclosure. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Jess grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. Can I talk to you, privately? She dragged me into the kitchen. The couple left the house quickly, mumbling something about needing to think about it. Brett stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching us. What the hell is wrong with you? Jess hissed. What's wrong with me? You're selling my father's house to fund your escape plan with him. I nodded toward Brett. That's not... I read your messages, Jess. I know about the champagne plans. I know about the new life, new me bullshit. I know everything. Her face twisted. For a moment, I thought she might cry, might apologize, might admit what she'd done. Instead, she shoved me hard in the chest. You're a coward. You've always been a coward. You're too small for me, Andrew. You always have been. Brett moved closer, chest puffed. I think you should leave. It's my house. Not for long. We stood there, the three of us, tension crackling. Brett was bigger than me, younger, stronger. But I wasn't planning to fight him. Not yet. I just needed to understand how far they'd go, how much they were counting on this. You need this sale? I said to Brett. You're overextended. I've done my research. You've got 3 projects underwater and creditors breathing down your neck. This commission is the only thing keeping you afloat. His expression flickered. Just for a second, I saw the fear. Get out, Jess said. I walked out, but not before I took one more look around, memorizing every detail, the fake staging, the empty walls, the lies they were building together. They thought they'd won. They thought I was beaten. That night, alone in my apartment, I spread the trust paperwork across the kitchen table and made my decision. If she wanted to sell the house, fine. I'd let her. I'd sign whatever needed signing, smile and nod and play the fool. And when the money came through, I'd make sure not a single cent ended up in her hands. The next morning, I met with Gerald again. This time, I brought a list. I want to set up a charitable foundation, I said. In my father's name. Something focused on vocational training for underprivileged kids. Carpentry, electrical work, that kind of thing. Gerald nodded approvingly. That's a good cause. Your father would have liked that. I want it established immediately, and I want the trust amended so that any proceeds from the sale of the house go directly into the foundation, not into joint accounts, not into my personal accounts, straight to the foundation. He picked up his pen. You're sure about this? Completely. This is going to be a shock to your wife. That's the point. Gerald didn't argue. Over the next 3 days, we filed the paperwork, established the foundation, and amended the trust. It was all above board, all legal, all documented. I had the right to do this. My father had made sure of it. And the best part? Jess had no idea. She thought the house sale would fill our accounts, fund her exit, give her the freedom to leave me and start over with Brett. She had no clue that I'd already rerouted the money, but humiliating her financially wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted her social world to collapse. I wanted her followers, her sponsors, her carefully curated image to implode. I'd saved copies of her worst messages, the ones where she mocked her followers for being broke and desperate, the ones where she called brand partnerships easy money from idiots, the ones where she talked about milking men for rent money. All of it was in writing, time-stamped, undeniable. I created a burner email account and sent the screenshots to a local gossip blog that covered influencers in the area. The blog, called Reality Check CT, had maybe 10,000 followers, but they were vicious. They loved taking down fake lifestyle gurus. I attached the screenshots with a simple message. Thought you might be interested in what Jess Living really thinks of her fans. 2 days later, the blog posted everything. The screenshots went up with a brutal headline, Jess Living's private messages reveal contempt for followers. The comments exploded. Her Instagram filled with angry messages, people calling her fake, entitled cruel. Brands started quietly pulling back. A skincare company canceled a campaign. A furniture sponsor dropped her without explanation. Jess called me, hysterical. Did you do this? Do what? Don't play dumb. Someone leaked my messages. It had to be you. Why would I do that? Because you're pathetic and jealous and you want to destroy me. Jess, I'm at work. I have no idea what you're talking about. She hung up. I sat at my desk, staring at the phone, and felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just cold, empty focus. That weekend, Jess had a scheduled event at a boutique downtown, some kind of launch party for a candle line she'd partnered with. She'd been promoting it for weeks, calling it the biggest moment of my career. I didn't plan to go. But then I got an idea. The boutique's sound system was controlled by a laptop behind the counter. The owner was a friend of a friend, someone I'd met at a networking event months ago. I reached out casually, said I had a surprise video montage I wanted to play during the event as a gift for Jess. He didn't question it. He gave me access to upload the file. The file wasn't a video, it was an audio clip, a compilation of Jess's most damning voice memos and recorded calls, stitched together into 3 minutes of pure venom, her laughing about followers being too stupid to know they're being scammed, her mocking a disabled fan who'd sent her a heartfelt message, her bragging to Brett about playing the game better than anyone. The event started at 7. By 7:15, the boutique was packed with influencers, minor local celebrities, and fans clutching candles. Jess stood at the center, glowing in a white dress, smiling for photos. I watched from across the street, parked in my car. At 7:30, the audio started playing over the speakers. The room went silent. People looked around, confused. Then they started listening. Phones came out. Recording started. Jess's face went from confusion to horror as her own voice filled the boutique, tearing apart the very people standing in front of her. She screamed for someone to turn it off. The owner scrambled for the laptop, but by then, the damage was done. People were already posting clips online. Hashtags started trending. Within an hour, the video had thousands of views. By midnight, it was everywhere. She knew it was me. She didn't have proof, but she knew. The next day, she came to my apartment. I opened the door to find her standing there, makeup smeared, eyes red. You're destroying me. I'm not doing anything. This is all you. The messages, the audio, everything. I leaned against the doorframe. You destroyed yourself, Jess. I just made sure people could see it. I'll sue you. For what? Telling the truth? She stared at me, shaking. You used to love me. I did. And you used me. Now we're even. She left without another word. I closed the door and went back to packing for Paris. But I wasn't done, not even close. Because while I was dismantling Jess's public image, I was also digging into Brett. And what I found was even better. Brett Calhoun wasn't just overextended. He was drowning. He'd taken out loans against properties he didn't fully own yet. He'd leveraged his own penthouse as collateral for a renovation project tied to the sale of my father's house. If the house deal fell through, or if his creditors called the loan, he'd lose everything. His fancy car, his apartment, his entire facade of success. And I had the power to make that happen. All I had to do was pull the foundation trigger, and the dominoes would start falling. I made one more call to Gerald before I left for Paris. If the house sells, I said, I want you to notify the trustee immediately. Don't wait for my confirmation. Just execute the transfer to the foundation the moment the papers are signed. You're certain? Completely. Andrew, this is scorched earth. Good. The ugliness arrived faster than I expected. 3 days after the car chase, I received a manila envelope at my office. Inside were photos, Jess and Brett at a hotel, Jess and Brett at restaurants, Jess and Brett in my father's house, months before the sale, clearly intimate. Someone had been documenting the affair for a while. There was also a note, handwritten. Thought you might want these for court. She's been using you longer than you think. A friend. I didn't recognize the handwriting. I suspected it was someone in Brett's circle. Maybe an investor or contractor with a grudge. It didn't matter. The photos were damning. They confirmed timelines, showed premeditation. Jess hadn't just fallen into an affair. She'd been planning her exit for over a year. Rachel looked at the photos and smiled grimly. This changes everything. We can argue she was plotting to defraud you of the house proceeds from the start. Will it hold up? Probably not in criminal court, but in divorce proceedings? Absolutely. This proves abandonment, infidelity, and intent to deprive you of marital assets. A judge is going to take one look at this and side with you. What about her debts? If we can show she incurred them while planning to leave you, the court might rule them solely her responsibility. I stared at the photos, Jess smiling at Brett, her face glowing with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen in years. It should have hurt. Instead, it just felt like ammunition. File everything, I said. Let's finish this. But Jess wasn't finished. She had one last card to play. That weekend, there was a charity gala downtown, a fundraiser for the local arts council. It was the kind of event Jess lived for: champagne, designer dresses, photo ops. She'd been planning to attend for months, back when her social currency still mattered. Now, after the leaked messages and the public humiliation, most people were avoiding her. But she showed up anyway, desperate to salvage something. I decided to attend too. I hadn't been to one of these things in years. I hated the fake smiles, the shallow conversations, the performative generosity. But I wanted to see her face when she realized I was there. I wanted her to know I wasn't hiding, wasn't ashamed, wasn't done. I wore my best suit, the one I saved for major client meetings. I arrived late after the cocktail hour and slipped into the ballroom. The event was in full swing. String quartet playing, waiters circulating with trays, hundreds of people pretending to care about abstract sculptures and community theater. Jess was near the bar, talking to a small group of women who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She was trying too hard, laughing too loud, her smile brittle. When she saw me, her face went pale. I walked over to the foundation table. Earlier that week, I'd made a significant donation to the Arts Council in the name of the Grayson Foundation for Vocational Education. They'd been thrilled. They'd given the foundation a featured table and a mention in the program. I'd declined to attend personally, but at the last minute, I changed my mind. The foundation's name was printed in the program under major donors. People kept coming up to me, thanking me, asking about the foundation's mission. I explained it patiently: vocational training for underprivileged kids, honoring my father's legacy, creating pathways to good-paying careers. They loved it. They asked how they could get involved. Jess watched from across the room, her expression shifting from shock to fury. Then the presentation started. The MC, a bubbly local news anchor, went through the list of donors. When she got to the Grayson Foundation, she paused. "This is a special one," she said. "Established just recently in honor of a man who spent his life building things with his own hands, teaching others to do the same. The Grayson Foundation has committed $500,000 over the next 5 years to vocational programs in our community." Applause filled the room. People turned to look at me. I stood, nodded, and sat back down. The MC continued. "The foundation was made possible by the sale of a family property, a beautiful home that many of us know. It's a wonderful example of turning personal loss into community gain." More applause. I saw Jess pushing through the crowd toward me, her face red. Behind her, Brett appeared in the doorway, drunk and disheveled. He must have crashed the event. "Andrew!" Jess hissed, grabbing my arm. "We need to talk, now!" "I'm listening. Not here. I'm not going anywhere." Brett lurched toward us. People were staring now. Phones were coming out. "You smug bastard," Brett slurred. "You think you won? You think this makes you better than us?" "I don't think about you at all," I said calmly. He swung at me. I saw it coming, stepped back, and he missed completely, stumbling into a table. Glasses shattered. Women screamed. Security moved in, grabbing Brett by the arms. "Get off me," he shouted. "That guy destroyed my life. He set me up. They dragged him toward the exit. Jess started crying, loud, dramatic sobs that made everyone uncomfortable. She turned to the crowd, playing the victim. "This is my husband," she said, pointing at me. "He took everything from me. Our house, our future, everything." I stood. The room went quiet. "I didn't take anything," I said, my voice steady. "The house was my father's. The trust was his design. You were welcome to leave any time. But you wanted to take the house with you, sell it, and walk away with millions. That's theft, not divorce." "You're lying." "Am I? Should I show them the messages you sent? The ones where you talked about milking me for everything? The ones where you called our marriage a practice run?" She went silent. The room was watching, rapt. "This foundation," I continued, gesturing at the program, "exists because my father believed in building things that last, teaching people real skills, creating value. You wanted to sell that and turn it into champagne and Instagram posts. So no, I don't feel guilty. I feel proud." Applause. Scattered at first, then louder. Jess looked around, betrayed by the very crowd she'd tried to impress. She turned and ran out of the ballroom, heels clicking on marble. I sat back down. A waiter appeared with a glass of whiskey. "On the house," he said quietly. I took a sip and watched the rest of the night unfold. People kept coming up to me, shaking my hand, telling me I'd done the right thing. I smiled and nodded and accepted their praise, even though I didn't care what they thought. All I cared about was that Jess and Brett were broken, publicly and completely. And I'd done it legally, cleanly, with nothing but their own greed and stupidity as weapons. But they weren't done yet, because desperation makes people dangerous. The next morning, I woke to 53 missed calls. Most were from numbers I didn't recognize. A few were from Rachel. One was from the police. I called Rachel first. "Where are you?" she asked immediately. "Home. What's going on?" "Jess and Brett filed a joint lawsuit against you. They're claiming fraud, emotional distress, conspiracy to deprive them of assets. It's a Hail Mary, but it's ugly." "Can they win?" "No, but they can drag this out and make it expensive." "Let them." "Andrew, there's more. Brett's creditors called his loans. He's losing his penthouse. And because Jess signed as a guarantor, they're coming after her too. She's looking at bankruptcy." I felt nothing, just cold, empty satisfaction. "What do they want?" I asked. "To settle. They're offering to drop everything if you agree to pay off Jess's debts and give Brett a severance payment for consulting fees." I laughed, actually laughed. "No, they're going to escalate. Let them." That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered, and it was Brett. His voice was different now. Quiet. Broken. "She's leaving me," he said. "What?" "Jess. She told me tonight. She said I'm worthless, that I ruined everything, that she never wanted me long-term anyway. She was going to ditch me the second the money hit." I stayed silent, processing. "She played both of us," Brett continued. "You were the safe bet. I was the exit strategy. And once she got what she wanted, she was going to disappear. She showed me the texts. Plans to move to California, start over, leave both of us behind." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm done protecting her, and I thought you should know the truth before you decide how far you want to take this." He hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. Then I opened Jess's old laptop, which I'd kept as evidence. I went through her files more carefully this time, looking for anything I'd missed. And I found it. A folder labeled Exit Plan. Inside were documents. Bank account applications in her name only, California apartment listings, a new LLC registered under a name I didn't recognize. There were also messages to someone I didn't know, a man named Elliot, planning a fresh start once the money cleared. She'd had a third guy lined up. Brett and I were just the opening acts. I screamed. Not out of sadness or betrayal, but rage. Pure, incandescent rage. She'd turned my life into a game, my father's legacy into a pawn, and she'd done it all while smiling at me across the dinner table. I called Rachel. "I want to file a countersuit," I said. "Fraud, conspiracy, breach of fiduciary duty, everything." "Andrew, I don't care. I want her buried." There was a long pause. "Okay, I'll draft it." But filing lawsuits wasn't enough. I wanted her to see me one more time. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't the underdog anymore. I was the wolf. I called her. "What do you want?" she said, her voice hoarse. "To meet. One last time." "Why?" "Closure." She hesitated. "When?" "Tonight. The house. It's not ours anymore. The keys still work. I checked. This is insane." "Then don't come." I hung up, and I waited.